It's nice to meet you, Dai Hankey.
Nice to meet you.
We have spoken on the phone, but we haven't met in the flesh. And I've been wondering for the last 15 minutes whether you, sitting over there, were indeed you. Because my next job is to interview you.
Normally people see me and think I'm going to rob the church, so I'm glad that we got that sorted out.
That thought didn't actually pass through my head. It's really nice to meet you. People have been talking very enthusiastically about you all week. This is the first time I've been here this week, sadly, because of all the things. But first of all, welcome to Northern Ireland.
Thank you.
Are you enjoying it here?
Love it.
There is a right answer.
That's right. It's Celtic cousins, isn't it, man?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Real family, really. So
The shared identity of being not English. It's great, isn't it? Yeah.
Indeed, absolutely. No, it is home from home, so it's good.
Okay. Well, I want you to tell us a little bit about that name of yours, because when I first heard Dai Hankey, I wasn't sure whether I was going to be able to say the name without sort of sniggering a little bit. Do you want to tell the people what it's about?
Yeah, so Hankey's not my fault. That was my dad's name as a surname. Hankey's a real name. Dai is what the Welsh people call Dave. So my real name's David.
Yep.
Middle name Elwyn, because I am properly Welsh. But in Wales, people are often abbreviated from David to Dai. So there's loads of Dais in Wales.
Yeah.
But on the birth certificate, it says David.
But you did something very specific, didn't you, about naming yourself that? Because I've done my research.
Oh, good research, man. Okay, so at the age of 15, I had an encounter with God which transformed my life. Up until the age of 15, I was angry, wretched, rebellious. You wouldn't have liked me very much. You might not like me now. But when God got his hands on me on a youth camp in 1992, my life was turned upside down. And there were two fellas from Bridgend, lads, teenage lads, who that week started just referring to me as Dai. Nobody in my hometown had called me Dai, but they started calling me Dai. And because I turned up one way and God changed my heart, I went home a different way. So I said, I'm keeping the new name. So I've been Dai ever since.
It's good, isn't it? I've died to self and all that sort of thing as well. There's a little pun there. Okay, well,
the puns are endless.
Tell us a little bit about, if you were to tell us everything you do in Wales, that we would be here for a long time. And I know you've got to get across the road soon to talk to the young people, but let's talk just a little bit about the things that you listed the other day when we chatted on the phone that you're involved in your ministry.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I'm a church planter. That means nobody would ever give me a job in a proper church, so I've got to start my own. And so I planted 2 churches. I'm currently on a sabbatical between church plants. I'm going to be planting another church in inner city Cardiff towards the end of the year. So I do that, but I also do a lot of work supporting survivors of modern slavery and human trafficking in Wales as well. So I set up a charity called Red Community with some friends of mine, some trustees, and so we basically care for primarily women, but also men who've been trafficked, and look after them, doing that as well.
How did you become interested in that?
Just, God broke my heart for it, man. If you've got a soft heart towards God, and God wants to, give you a broken heart for something, then you do what he tells you to do, innit? And I know there's loads of other issues around, but for whatever reason, back in 2012, he smashed my heart open with the issue of the exploitation of men, women, and children. Sure. And he just said, that's your thing until I tell you otherwise. So yeah. I've just been trying to, mouth off about it ever since and tell people.
Sure. Tell us a little bit about coffee. Because coffee's a big thing for you, isn't it?
It is.
Do you like coffee?
I love coffee. They call it Christian crack cocaine, don't they? And so I do love coffee. But out of the charity that we set up, supporting women who've been trafficked, we were told that some of the women really wanted to get back into work because of the horrors that they'd suffered, with their exploitation. The thought of going to a 9-to-5 job, 5 days a week, was a bit too much. So we as a charity decided we should do something about it. And myself and one of the other trustees, my friend Nick, decided to set up a small coffee roasting business in Cardiff. And we employ just a small number of survivors of trafficking to roast our coffee. And it's called Manumit Coffee Roasters.
It's called what, sorry?
Manumit.
Manumit.
Yeah. So the word manumit means to set free from slavery.
Oh, right, okay.
It's a proper English word, but an old one, which no one's ever heard of. And so we stuck with it because everyone says, what does that mean? And then we get to tell them why we do what we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then there's the books. Tell us about the books.
Yeah, I wrote a few books as well, so there's some out there.
Oh, they're out there. Just on the way out tonight?
Just on the way out, yeah.
Beside our CDs?
Conveniently, yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
That's great. And you're the father of 4 children as well?
Father of 4 children, yeah, and owner of 2 dogs.
When I heard that list, I felt stressed. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things going on there. And I'm going to ask you a couple of questions.
The coffee helps.
The coffee helps. Coffee does not help in the long run, mate. What drives you?
we love because he first loved us, innit? And I still can't believe that God saved me and gave me a second chance. And so it's his love that drives me, really. And yeah, so I'm, even though I've messed up loads, even since I became a Christian, he's never stopped loving me. The Bible's full of truths and promises that convince me of that. So I just try and live like I'm grateful.
Yeah, okay. I think a lot of people come to this because they're interested in ministry. I think there are a lot of people in full-time ministry who attend this convention because it fires them up and it tells them about other things that are going on in the world. And I think, as I've been thinking about you, there's a question I do want to ask you, which is a more challenging one than we discussed on the phone, which is the whole business of how, as a person whose life is divided in so many different directions, you separate out the business. I think an awful lot of people in ministry are driven by to-do lists and what has to happen next. And how you separate that out from the basic thing of loving God and having your family in the right place and having... It's a very difficult balancing act, isn't it? Because I think sometimes ministry can become a list of things to do that actually stands in the way of our relationship with God at times. And I think many people in ministry struggle with that at different stages in life because of the various demands of it. What would you say as someone who is dividing your life up? I mean, in terms of how you manage to balance that with the basic disciplines of Bible reading, prayer, and loving the Lord?
Yeah. I probably don't do it very well, to be honest with you. That's my honest answer. I wish I was better at it. But I think that you need to hold everything in an open hand.
Yeah.
So, for example, I planted a church about 6 years ago. I've now stood down as an elder from that. We got a building, we got a budget, we got a beautiful church. And when it came to stepping away from it, I was grateful that God... I didn't have any kind of what ifs or regrets. It's like, that's not, because I'm not defined by a church plant. I'm not defined by anything. I might get some emails next week saying, Dai, I bought your book. It sucks. And it's important in those moments to be like, well, I'm not defined by books either. I'm not defined by... Some people might appreciate my talk tonight. Some people might say, didn't understand the word he said or didn't like it. I'm not defined by that either. And you've got to constantly remind yourself that the only thing which really matters is what the Lord thinks of you. Sure. And where you're at with him. And I could suck tonight, guys, as a preacher, but he still loves me. And I really believe that. So, you just got to constantly remind yourselves of what is eternally true, not what's just, true for a minute.
Well, I'm thankful to God for people who are called to work to the limits of what God is able to do through them. And I'm thankful for meeting you.
And me too, man.
And thank you very much. We're looking forward to hearing you speak to us. I'm going to do one more thing, if that's okay.
That's fine.
And this is really off the cuff. And you can say no to this if you want.
Okay.
But one of my pastors sent me one of your poems this morning.
Okay.
And I think it's very good.
Okay.
Would you read it?
Yeah, of course.
That one.
Okay. Oh, this is a poem from my new book. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, it's from your new book?
Yes, yeah.
Is it out there?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
And all good bookstores from the 1st of September.
I'm going to need that back off you in a moment, so
That's
I'm going to
fine.
wait here while you do the poem, but we'll finish the interview there.
Yeah. So it's basically a book that I wrote, which was I was in a very dark place, and I was really struggling, and this is a poem that came out of that. I lay in a crumpled heap, not strong but weak, a pitiful mess but blessed to collapse at the Master's feet. My troubled soul was weary, my heart was cold and heavy. Come, receive my rest, he whispered to me gently. His words were kind and true. I know what you've been through. I've got all the grace you need, and I'm giving it to you. Such mercy in his face as he lavished me with grace. My weary soul found rest in the warmth of his embrace. I feasted on his gospel, and where before I'd crumpled, fresh strength began to rise as hopeward faith was kindled. Emboldened by the saints, empowered by the Spirit, I began to grasp the love of Christ, a love that knows no limits. Follow me, the Master called. Just take a step, however small. Don't be afraid. I'll be right here to catch you when you fall. So press on, weary soul, roared on by saints of old. Fix your eyes on Christ the prize. Keep running, hopeward, home.